On June 18, 2022, at exactly 7:42 p.m., my father stood up during my wedding reception, tapped his glass with a fork, and asked for everyone's attention. There were howdy 214 guests soon in the hall, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet still holding their bows midair, my bride beside me, fingers intertwined with mine, smiling because she thought this was about to be a blessing. My father smiled too. Then he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out my mother's bank passbook. It was old, navy blue, corners frayed, the kind of thing most people stopped carrying years ago. He held it between two fingers like it embarrassed him. "Since we're celebrating family tonight," he said, voice loud and amused, "I thought I'd share something. Inspiration. People laughed politely. Someone clapped once, confused. He flipped the passbook open and squinted dramatically. "After 34 years of marriage," he continued, "this is all your mother managed to save." He turned it outward so the nearest tables could see. Then he read the number. 14327. Silence. Not the respectful kind. The kind that sucks the air out of a room. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. "Imagine trusting someone this bad with money," he said. "Good thing I handled the finances, right?" My mother didn't move. She was seated 3 rows back, wearing the pale gray sari she'd chosen because it wouldn't draw attention. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes stayed on the tablecloth. I noticed in that frozen moment that her shoulders were shaking, not with tears. With effort. The effort it takes not to break. I stood up instinctively. Took 1 step forward. She lifted 1 finger. Just slightly. A signal only I would notice. "Don't." My father kept going. "Now," he said, raising the passbook higher. "This is what happens when someone pretends to be humble but is really just irresponsible." Someone at the back coughed. A chair scraped. My bride's smile was gone now. My father wasn't done. "Honestly," he added, "I almost didn't let her sit with the family tonight. Wouldn't want people thinking this reflects on us." Us. That word landed harder than anything else. I scanned the room. Faces turned away. Eyes dropped. My aunt stared into her wine glass like it held answers. My cousin stopped chewing mid-bite. No one said a word. My mother still didn't look up. That was when my father gestured toward the stage. "And since numbers matter," he said brightly, "why don't we ask the bank representative here tonight to explain what that balance really means?" I froze. I hadn't known there would be a bank representative. A man in a charcoal suit stood slowly from the head table. He looked uncomfortable, professional, prepared. My father handed him the passbook with a flourish. "Go ahead," my father said. "Tell them how little this is." The man didn't open it. He looked at my mother first, then at me. Then he said very calmly, "Sir, this passbook is not the primary account." Every head in the room snapped back toward the stage. My father laughed. "Of course it is." The man shook his head once. "No," he said. "It's the decoy." The word echoed. Decoy. The man adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat. "And before I continue," he added, "I need to confirm. Are you sure you want this explained publicly?" My father waved him on, still smiling. "Yes," he said. "By all means." I looked at my mother. For the first time that night, she lifted her head. And she smiled. Not wide, not proud, just relieved. That was the moment I realized my father had made a mistake he could never undo. Before that night, my life had been quiet in a way that never attracted attention. I worked as a project operations manager for a mid-sized logistics firm. Nothing glamorous, no flashy title, but steady. I'd been there 8 years, promoted 3 times, trusted with budgets that ran into 7 figures. I paid my bills early. I filed my taxes on time. I slept well. I lived in a 2-bedroom condo I bought myself at age 31. With a down payment I'd saved over 9 years. Neutral walls, plants I remembered to water, a place that felt earned. My parents told people I was doing fine. They said it the way people talk about a distant cousin. My younger brother Aaron was the one they talked about with pride. Aaron was 2 years younger, louder, sharper edges. He switched majors 3 times, dropped out once, moved back home twice. But every story about him came with admiration. "He's figuring things out," my father would say. When I stayed late at work, I was married to my job. When Aaron quit another position after 4 months, he was too talented to be boxed in. My mother smoothed everything over. She always did. If my father interrupted me mid-sentence, she would touch my arm later and whisper, "He didn't mean it like that." If Aaron borrowed money and forgot to repay it, she'd say, "He's under a lot of pressure." She never contradicted my father in public. She never contradicted him in private either. What she did instead was quieter. She packed lunches even when no one asked. She stayed up balancing handwritten ledgers late into the night. She kept envelopes labeled with dates and notes in her careful script. I didn't know what they were for back then. Growing up, my role was simple. Don't make trouble. Don't need too much. Don't embarrass the family. I learned early that calm earned me space. Silence earned me safety. So I built a life that didn't require permission. I paid my own college fees after my second year, took out loans, worked weekends. When my father asked why I didn't just ask him, I shrugged and said I had it handled. He nodded approvingly. Self-sufficient. Low maintenance. My wedding planning followed the same pattern. My bride and I paid for most of it ourselves. Venue deposit of 12,000 ekar. Catering for 2 guests, because my parents insisted on inviting extended family I barely knew. I didn't argue. It was easier to absorb the cost than the commentary. My father offered opinions anyway. On the menu, on the seating chart, on whether my mother's sari looked a bit much. She accepted every critique with a nod. Only once did she say something strange. 2 weeks before the wedding, while folding linens at my place, she paused and said, "No matter what happens, just stand where you can see clearly." I asked her what she meant. She smiled and went back to folding. At the rehearsal dinner, my father dominated the conversation. Aaron told a loud story about a business idea that hadn't launched yet. Everyone laughed. My mother poured tea. No one asked about my work. No one asked about my plans. And that was fine, because I wasn't building a life to be admired. I was building one that couldn't be taken away. The Passbook incident didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time my father assumed the room would belong to him, and the last time he forgot who had been quietly keeping records all along. Looking back, there was never a single moment where things went wrong. It was a pattern, repeated so often it started to feel like gravity. Always there, rarely questioned. When I was 10, my school held an awards ceremony. I received a certificate for placing second in the district math competition. Not first, second. I still remember standing on stage, holding the stiff paper with both hands so it wouldn't shake. My father didn't attend. He said later that evening, "Second place just means someone else worked harder." That same year, Aaron brought home a participation trophy from a weekend soccer league. My father cleared space on the mantel for it. "Confidence matters at his age," he said. When I was 16, I asked if I could attend a summer science program at a state university.
Tuition was cut $2,400.
I'd already saved Mayor 100 from tutoring and weekend shifts. My father flipped through the brochure and said, "Waste of money. You'll just end up working for someone smarter." 2 months later, Aaron announced he wanted a new guitar. Custom. Imported. Cost. $3,200. My father paid without hesitation. "He needs creative outlets," he explained. At dinner, if I spoke too long, my father checked his phone. If Aaron rambled, my father leaned forward, engaged. If I disagreed, I was argumentative. If Aaron contradicted him, it was healthy debate. The rules shifted depending on who was standing in front of him. My mother witnessed all of it. She never denied it happened. She just reframed it. "He worries about you because you're capable," she'd say. "He's harder on you because he expects more." That explanation followed me into adulthood. When I graduated college and took my first job, my father asked how much I earned. I told him, 54,000. He nodded once. Respectable, but not impressive. 2 years later, Aaron announced a startup idea. No revenue, no product, just a pitch deck. My father introduced him at family gatherings as an entrepreneur. When I bought my condo, my father asked how much the mortgage was. When I answered, he laughed. "You'll be paying that forever," he said. Then he turned to Aaron. "Don't rush into debt. Smart people wait for opportunity." The gaslighting was subtle. If I mentioned feeling overlooked, my father said I was imagining things. If I pointed out differences, he said I was keeping score. If I stopped bringing things up, he said I'd finally matured. My mother became the messenger. "He didn't mean to hurt you. He's under stress. You know how he is?" I did know how he was. What I didn't know was why my mother never defended herself. She absorbed criticism like a habit. Financial jokes, comments about her cooking, remarks about her clothes, always said with a smile that left no room for response. At family dinners, my father handled the money talk. investments, property, accounts. My mother sat quietly, passing dishes. Once, when I was 25, I asked her privately why she never corrected him when he misstated something. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Some battles aren't meant to be loud." At the time, I thought that was resignation. Now I know it was strategy, because while my father spoke confidently about finances, my mother kept records. While he joked about her passbook, she balanced numbers to the cent. While he taught Aaron how to speak loudly, she taught me, without words, how to watch. The wedding wasn't an outburst. It was escalation. And by then, the pattern was so ingrained that my father truly believed humiliation was harmless. After all, no one had ever stopped him before. Not publicly. The week before the wedding, the house filled the way it always did before big events. Too many voices. Too much food. Opinions layered over one another until nothing felt clear. Relatives flew in from 3 states. My aunt took over the guest room. Cousins slept on couches. My father moved through it all like a host, directing traffic, issuing instructions, correcting details no one had asked him to oversee. My mother followed behind, fixing what he disrupted. One afternoon, while I was loading bottled water into coolers for the reception, my grandmother called me into the living room. She was my mother's mother, 81 years old, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who rarely repeated herself. She patted the couch beside her. "You're getting married," she said. "That's good." Then she lowered her voice. "Your father likes an audience." I didn't respond. She continued anyway. "He also likes control, especially when he thinks he has it." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded receipt. Yellowed. Old. "Your mother has been preparing longer than you realize." Before I could ask what she meant, my father walked in, clapping his hands. "Why is everyone sitting?" he asked. "We have things to do." My grandmother slipped the paper back into her purse and smiled sweetly. "Of course," she said. "You always do." That night, during dinner, my father brought up finances again. He always did when there was an audience. He joked about wedding costs, about how young people didn't understand money anymore, about how my mother had never had a head for numbers. My mother said nothing. But I noticed something new. She wasn't shrinking. She was waiting. Later, when I walked her to the car, I asked if she was okay. She squeezed my hand and said, "Tomorrow will be busy." Not reassurance. Deflection. The rehearsal day arrived heavy with heat and tension. At the venue, my father insisted on rearranging seating. He moved my mother farther from the front, saying the aisle needed to look balanced. She didn't argue. When the coordinator asked who was handling final payments, my father stepped forward immediately. "I am," he said. The coordinator hesitated. "Our records show Mrs. Rao as the primary account holder." My father laughed it off. "Oh, that's just for paperwork." My mother met the coordinator's eyes. She nodded once. The coordinator nodded back. Something passed between them, silent, acknowledged. That evening, as guests mingled during the rehearsal dinner, my father grew more animated. He told stories that painted himself as the provider, the decision-maker, the one who had built everything. Each story erased my mother a little more. I watched relatives smile, nod, absorb the narrative. Only a few looked uneasy. My grandmother said nothing. Neither did my mother. But when my father raised his glass and joked about how some people should never be trusted with checkbooks, my grandmother set her fork down. The sound was sharp, intentional. She looked directly at him and said, "Careful." The table went quiet. My father laughed. "Careful of what?" My grandmother held his gaze. "Of saying things you don't understand." The silence stretched. Then my father waved it away. "Old stories," he said. "No one wants those at a wedding." My grandmother smiled faintly. "That's a shame," she replied. "Some stories come whether you invite them or not." That was the first time I felt it clearly. The sense that something was being staged, not by my father, by my mother, and that whatever was coming, it would happen in front of everyone. Exactly where my father felt safest. Exactly where he was most wrong. The reception hall smelled like polished wood and warm bread. Lights dimmed softly as plates were cleared. The band stepped back. This was the part of the evening reserved for speeches. Toasts. Safe stories. My father stood before anyone invited him to. He didn't look at me first. Or my bride. He turned to the room. "I won't take long," he said, smiling. "But as the head of this family, I feel it's my duty to say a few words." Some people clapped out of reflex. My mother remained seated. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out the passbook. "I found this while cleaning," he said casually. Thought it was funny. He opened it slowly. Let the moment stretch. "After all these years," he said, shaking his head, "this is what poor money management looks like." He read the balance. 23.27. A few people laughed, nervously, unsure. He held it higher. "This," he said, "is why one person in a marriage should handle finances." Silence crept in. Not dramatic, just uncomfortable. My father continued anyway. "I mean, imagine trusting your future to someone who thinks saving spare change counts as planning." My mother didn't move. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. My bride's hand was ice cold in mine. Around the room, people shifted in their seats. A cousin looked down at her phone. Someone cleared their throat. No one interrupted. My father mistook that for agreement. He gestured toward my mother. "She means well," he said. "But discipline matters." He laughed again, alone this time. Then he turned to the head table. "Luckily," he said, "we have a professional here tonight, a bank representative. Maybe he can explain what that number really means." The man in the charcoal suit stood. The room held its breath. My father handed him the passbook. "Go ahead," my father said. "Be honest." The man didn't open it. He looked at my mother. She nodded once. Then he spoke. "Sir," he said evenly, "this passbook reflects a secondary account." My father frowned. "There's no secondary—" "There is," the man said gently. "This one was created in mass." Whispers rippled through the room. "It's designed to look small," the man continued, "because it's not where the assets are held." My father laughed, sharper now. "That's ridiculous." The man adjusted his stance. "The primary accounts," he said, "are in Mrs. Rao's name alone." My father's smile faltered. The man paused. Then added, "Combined balance as of this morning. 407,112.64. The silence was total. No movement. No sound. My father stared at him. "That's impossible," he said. The man met his eyes. "No," he replied. "It's documented." My mother stood, slowly, calmly. She didn't look at my father. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, she didn't look like someone being endured. She looked like someone finished waiting. As the room remained frozen, she said one sentence. "This is why I told you not to speak tonight. If you were sitting in that room, what would you have done next? Spoken up, stayed silent, or waited to see how deep the truth really went?" My father opened his mouth, closed it, then laughed again, too loudly. "That's absurd," he said. "There must be a mistake." The bank representative didn't argue. He didn't need to. He reached into his folder and placed documents on the podium. One by one, clean, methodical. Mrs. Rao opened her first independent account on March 14th, 1991, he said. 2 weeks after her marriage. My father stiffened. "That account," the man continued, "was funded initially with $2,500 from her premarital savings and a small inheritance." My mother's hands were steady at her sides. She continued contributing monthly, the man said, averaging about $200 to $1,800, depending on household expenses. My father shook his head. "She didn't earn that kind of money." The man looked at him. "No," he said. "She managed it." A murmur moved through the room. "Over the next 31 years, the man went on, Mrs. Rao invested conservatively. Index funds, bonds, real estate trusts. Nothing speculative." He flipped a page. She also redirected funds from joint accounts. After discovering irregular withdrawals, that word landed hard. Irregular. My father stepped forward. "What withdrawals?" The man didn't respond to him directly. In 2003, he said, and again in 2009. Significant sums were removed from joint accounts without Mrs. Rao's consent. Amounts totaling, though, 418 enter. My father's face reddened. "That money went to family needs," he snapped. The man nodded. "Yes, including unsecured loans to your brother-in-law, a failed restaurant venture, and a property registered solely in your name." The room stirred. My mother spoke for the first time since standing. "Please continue," she said quietly. The man did. "After those discoveries," he said, "Mrs. Rao separated her finances completely. All future income from her consulting, work and inheritance distributions went into accounts only she controlled." My father turned toward her. "You were spying on me?" She looked at him then. "No," she said. "I was protecting myself." The man placed another document forward. "Inward 2012, he said. Mrs. Rao also became the sole beneficiary of a trust established by her mother." My grandmother shifted in her chair. "Value $1.9 million. My father swayed slightly. "That trust," the man continued, "was never disclosed to you at Mrs. Rao's request." My father laughed again, but it sounded hollow now. "You let me believe—" "You assumed," my mother said. The bank representative wasn't finished. "There's also a matter of account activity between 2015 and 2018, he said, voice steady. "Attempts to access Mrs. Rao's accounts using forged authorization forms." A sharp intake of breath spread through the hall. The man didn't raise his voice. "Those attempts were logged, recorded, and preserved." My father's hands clenched. "That's a serious accusation." "Yes," the man replied, "which is why they were reviewed by legal counsel." The word legal settled heavily. "These documents," he said, tapping the folder, "were prepared in anticipation of tonight." My father looked around the room. At the guests, at the family, at the audience he'd counted on. No one met his eyes. My mother took a small step forward. "I never wanted spectacle," she said. "But I will not be ridiculed for surviving what you risked." Her voice didn't shake. "I built security quietly," she continued, "because noise invites interference." She turned to me then. "I stayed silent," she said, "so you wouldn't have to grow up managing someone else's ego." My father finally spoke low. "You planned this." My mother nodded once. "Yes." The bank representative closed the folder. "And for the record," he added, "this concludes the financial portion." The phrase "hot financial portion" is echoed ominously, because everyone in that room could feel it. This wasn't the end. It was only the part that proved she'd been telling the truth all along. The room hadn't recovered from the numbers when my grandmother stood. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. When you've lived 8 decades, silence tends to move out of your way. "There's something else," she said. My father turned toward her, relief flickering for half a second. She was his last familiar anchor. The elder, the one who usually kept peace. She did not sit back down. She reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a thin envelope, creased from age. "I told your mother," she said, addressing me now, "that if he ever tried to humiliate her publicly, this would no longer stay buried." My father's voice sharpened. "What is this?" My grandmother ignored him. "You grew up thinking your father was harsh because he expected more from you," she said. "That you weren't enough. That you had to earn space." She looked directly at my father. That was never the truth. She opened the envelope. Inside was a certified copy of a deed's birth registration amendment, dated October 3rd, 1994. She handed it to the bank representative, who glanced at it once before his expression changed. Then she said it. "You are not his biological child." The words didn't explode. They sank, slowly, deeply. My father laughed reflexively. "That's impossible." My grandmother finally turned to him. "No," she said. "What's impossible is how long you punished a child for a truth you created." The room fractured. Gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping. My mother closed her eyes, not in shame but in release. My grandmother continued. "You knew," she said. "Before the wedding. Before the house. Before the accounts." My father's voice dropped. "You promised." "I promised silence," my grandmother replied. "Not protection." She turned to me again. "Your mother was pregnant when she met him," she said. "Abandoned. Working 2 jobs. He offered stability. A name." My father shook his head violently. "And when people whispered," my grandmother went on, "he decided the child would never forget it." I felt something in my chest rearrange. Every withheld praise, every comparison, every test I was never meant to pass. "They married," my grandmother said, "on the condition that the truth never surfaced." She looked at my mother, and she agreed, because safety mattered more than pride. My mother spoke softly. "He never hit you," she said to me. "He never shouted. But he made sure you knew you were temporary." My father stepped back. "You lied to me," he said. My mother met his gaze evenly. "No," she replied. "You punished me for trusting you." My brother stood abruptly. "This is insane," Aaron said. "You're making him look like a monster." My grandmother looked at Aaron. "He did that himself," she said. "By confusing blood with ownership." The room split. Some relatives moved toward my mother. Others clustered near my father, uncertain. My father looked at me. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. "You were never supposed to find out like this," he said. I nodded once. "You're right," I replied. "I was never supposed to find out at all. If you were standing there, learning that the rules you lived by were written to keep you small, would you confront it? Immediately. Or would you need distance before deciding who you really are?" No one raised their voice after that. There was no shouting match, no dramatic exit, just a slow, irreversible shift in gravity. My grandmother remained standing. "I won't pretend this didn't cost me sleep," she said. "But I won't let it cost him his future." She gestured toward me. "From this moment," she continued, "any narrative that paints him as less than family ends." She turned to my father. "And any attempt to undermine his mother ends now." My father opened his mouth. She raised one hand. "You forfeited authority when you tried to humiliate her," she said. "Public cruelty voids private loyalty." No one contradicted her. The bank representative gathered his papers. "Legal counsel will follow up," he said calmly. "Regarding the unauthorized access attempts." My father stiffened. "This was a misunderstanding," he said weakly. The man nodded. "That's for the courts to decide." The word "a court's bud" landed with finality. My mother stepped forward then. "I'm not asking for apologies," she said. "I'm asking for distance." She looked at my father. "From my finances. From my decisions. From my dignity." Her voice was steady, non-negotiable. "I will be filing for legal separation," she added. Effective immediately. My father's shoulders slumped. He looked smaller. Not defeated, just exposed. Relatives began to move. Some hugged my mother, quietly. Some avoided my father entirely. A few offered him stiff, uncertain nods. No one defended him. Aaron hovered, torn. "You didn't have to do this," he said to my mother. She looked at him kindly. "I did," she replied. "So you wouldn't learn the same lesson from him." My grandmother took my hand. "You owe no one explanations," she said. "Only truth." The reception ended early. Not in chaos, in clarity. Guests left quietly. Conversations low, the story already rearranging itself in their minds. My father walked out alone. No speech, no farewell, just a man who had mistaken control for permanence. That night, my mother stayed with us. She slept peacefully for the first time in years. Justice didn't arrive as revenge. It arrived as consequence, and it stayed. The weeks after the wedding were quiet. Not the awkward kind, the settling kind. My mother moved into a small, sunlit apartment near the river. 2 bedrooms, wide windows. No heavy furniture. She said she wanted space to breathe. Legal proceedings unfolded the way quiet plans usually do, efficiently. The unauthorized access attempts were confirmed. Accounts were frozen. Assets protected. My father's authority over anything. That wasn't his evaporated on paper long before it did in his mind. There were no dramatic phone calls. Just notices. Just boundaries. My mother didn't celebrate. She reorganized. She joined a morning walking group. Started cooking meals she liked instead of meals that avoided comment. She laughed more easily. Slept through the night. I noticed it in the small things. She stopped flinching when her phone rang. She started leaving lights on in rooms she wasn't using. She bought herself a blue shawl that didn't go with everything. My father tried once to reach out. He sent a message asking to talk things through. My mother replied with one sentence. "Please direct communication through counsel." He never wrote again. Aaron struggled. He called me late one night, voice unsteady. "I don't know who I am if he's wrong," he said. I told him the truth. "You don't lose yourself when someone else's version collapses," I said. "You just finally get a chance to build one." We speak now, carefully, honestly. Some relatives disappeared from our lives. Others grew closer. That was the real inheritance. Clarity. My wife and I returned from our honeymoon and settled into ordinary routines. Work. Dishes. Shared jokes at midnight. One evening, while sorting old paperwork, my mother handed me a folder. Inside were records she'd kept since before I could read. School forms. Medical notes. Savings bonds in my name. "I never wanted you to feel borrowed," she said. "So I made sure you were always backed." I didn't cry. I understood. The truth about my birth didn't break me. It explained me. Why independence felt natural. Why silence felt safe. Why I built stability brick by brick. I wasn't unwanted. I was protected. My father lost an audience. My mother gained her life, and I gained something quieter. Ownership of my own story. I don't introduce myself by blood anymore. I introduce myself by choice. And for the first time, that feels complete.